Yes, hello again. Welcome back to your number one and favourite classic dirt bike TV channel, where we continue to showcase more of those old school vintage dirt bikes from way back in the day. Now, if you're a brand new subscriber to CDB TV, then welcome aboard, and I hope you continue to find material here to look at with regards checking out these old school vintage race bikes. So let's get down to our next video posting, and this featured bike is a machine I spotted at the 2019 Telford Classic Dirt Bike Show, and this bike was sitting on the Husqvarna Man stand over the course of that 2 days of the show. So let's get straight into it and take a look at their lovely 570 Husqvarna four-stroker. And so, as I said, this is another one of the very nice bikes I came across at the Telford Classic Dirt Bike Show in 2019, and this featured machine here is an example of some of the engineering skills by the guys at the Husky Spare Parts and Bike Restoration Company, husqvarnaman.co.uk. Now, Husqvarna Man are another one of the specialist companies who supply spare and special components for all manner of Swedish Husqvarna off-road bikes, although most of their focus is mainly on catering for vintage twin-shock, two-stroke and four-stroke Huskies from 1970 to around 1989. But they also undertake various forms of Husqvarna bike restorations as well, so they're quite another good contact to keep on your phone if you're needing spare parts or other services for your old Swedish race bikes. And so, beginning with the bike's chassis, which is essentially a slightly modified frame that's been taken from the 1984 125 CR liquid-cooled Husqvarna, and as you can see, the little 125 CR chassis is made from very light gauge tubular steel, but it's certainly got its work cut out here, supporting that big four-banger motor when you consider that it was just a relatively light liquid-cooled two-stroke engine that sat in this frame originally. But it all seems to fit together quite nicely and is superbly engineered by the guys at Husqvarna Man. Now, as we move on to the bike's power plant, which is an upgraded version of the old 510 four-stroke Husky motor that was fitted onto the old bikes of the early 1980s, although this engine here has now been fitted out with some very nice trick parts, all supplied by HVM, which, as you'd expect, make this big four-stroke motor perform a lot better than in its stock standard trim. But firstly, the motor's cylinder head has been redeveloped and, as you'd expect, been fitted with the latest Husky four-stroke enhancements, including bigger valves and race-developed valve springs. But again, the motor's barrel is not your stock 510 or 520 four-banger cylinder, and this naturally has been bored out to 570 cc's with the usual piston improvements that come along when you bore out a barrel to a much larger capacity. Now, the crankshaft, again, I'm led to believe, is an upgraded crank from the big 610 Husqvarna bike, although in terms of the particulars of that crank and its big end rod, etc., I'm not really in possession of all of those details. But on the transmission side of the engine, the big 570 has been treated to an upgraded clutch to try and help cope with the increase in power, but the gearbox was just kept at a 4-speed unit, as HVM thought that this would help towards the reliability of the transmission, and besides, with the grunt that was being supplied from that 570 power plant, 4 speeds was certainly more than enough cogs to keep our Husky at the sharp end of the pack. And again, as you're aware, these big Husky Thumpers were a single cylinder, but did have this twin port cylinder head with these twin header pipes that normally ran onto an exhaust tailpipe that ran down either side of the bike. But in our case here, the exhaust system on our machine is a custom-made in-Connell system, which runs the 2 header pipes into a single tailpipe here at the rear, which not only is much more efficient, but also reduces the all-up weight of the motorcycle. And what's more, there's quite a decent bark from this tailpipe when our big Husky gets fired up. Now, to feed that massive 570 cylinder with its fuel, we have a quite sizable 42mm flat slide carburetor tucked up in this alloy airbox, and because you're getting such a big bang for your buck, Big Red certainly likes a drink, so the gas can flow quite quickly through this carburetor when the motor's working hard. But another very nice upgrade that HVM have bolted on to this light 125CR chassis are these top quality wide footrests, which are a major improvement over those skinnier items that probably would have been bolted onto this chassis back in 1984. But these big footrests will certainly give the rider's feet much more support when he's standing up on the pegs, and these are again top quality items from HVM. Although I expect that there are plenty more parts on this 570 engine that I'm not really aware of, because I'm only going by what information I gained from the HVM information board on the day, but it's certainly a big, formidable lump of an engine, as you can see, and I expect that if you're into your old 4-stroke Thumpers, then you'll certainly appreciate the workmanship that's gone in to this 4-stroke HVM motor. Now, at the time of filming this bike, there wasn't really any information on this front suspension that was bolted onto the big 570 Husky, but it's almost certainly not from an early 1980s Husky model, that's for sure. But nevertheless, these are still a strong pair of front forks, which are probably sourced from a much later machine, but they still look like they're ideally suited to our 4-banger twin chocker, and my guess is that these are around the 50mm mark. So as conventional motocross suspensions go, these certainly look like they'll be able to cope with just about anything that this big Husky comes across at a motocross race event. And so as we move on to the rear end of our Husky, HVM have opted to go for a pair of good quality YSS piggyback shocks to try and complement the sturdiness of that front end of the bike. But these YSS units do have quite a good reputation for ruggedness and reliability, and they are all, of course, made here in the UK, which makes them hugely popular with riders who race these kind of twin chock race bikes. Now again, more of those HVM upgrades as we turn to the brakes on our Husky, and our 570 has been given twin leading shoe stoppers on both this back brake and also on the front as well. But again, it's all very top quality material, and this front brake backplate is a completely redesigned part that's been CNC machined from a single piece of billet alloy, and once again just another of the remanufactured parts that they supply for these machines. More very nice engineering stuff once again, with this alloy torque arm for that rear brake, and a sturdy looking chain guide as well, and roller system just to try and keep that rear drive chain running straight and true. Now, almost certainly HVM have used a fuel tank from one of the earlier 1970s Husqvarnas, which in the past would have been painted in a variety of different colours, but I must say I quite like the colour scheme that they've chosen for this bike, as it does fit in quite well with that silver painted chassis and the bike's gold coloured wheels. But that bronze coloured fuel tank is certainly a focal point when you first set your eyes on the bike. Now, our big Red's seat is more than likely another remanufactured part made and supplied by HVM, and this also has one of those non-slip covers on the top of it, just to try and stop the rider's backside from slipping around unintentionally while he's astride the bike. But certainly another very good quality product. But I expect that all of the bike's plastics, including these side panels, are all brand new parts and not NOS or new old stock originals. But it's still very good that these parts are being remade for these older twin shockers, because it does all help towards keeping these Husqvarnas out there on the racetracks. Anyhow, this HVM bike is certainly without doubt a stunning looking machine, and as I said, an HVM test bed to try and promote and test all of their latest Husky products. And what a great combination of chassis and engine, using that 125 CR84 frame and this pretty awesome 570 four-stroke motor, which, although it looks a bit ungainly and heavy, can still produce bucket loads of torque and power. And if you're into your old four-banger power plants, then they certainly don't come much better than these big Swedish grunters. But as I said, it's certainly worth taking a look at HVM's website or Facebook page just to see what they're all about, because if you have an old Husky that's in need of some brand new parts and servicing or even restoration, then I'm pretty sure that HVM can help you out. Now, although our featured bike here isn't an original Husky, it's still certainly in keeping with the parameters and the nature of twin shock motocross, because it still has drum brakes on both the front and the rear, an air-cooled motor of course, and conventional forks at the front. But more importantly, these twin shock rear suspension units at the back, which are all requirements to enable it to race in the coveted twin shock racing class. But this particular HVM machine here was number 14 off the Husqvarna Man production line, and if this is the kind of quality bikes that's being produced by HVM, then I just can't wait to take a look at number 15. Well, there you have it. I'm sure you enjoyed that walk around the Husqvarna Man's lovely 570 four-stroke Thumper. And if you're into your big four-banger dirt bikes, then I'm sure you'll appreciate all of the trick parts that Husqvarna Man have bolted onto that machine. But coming up next here on CDB TV, we're going to take a look at another quite rare machine, and this 1990 CZ125 type 519 motocrosser was basically CZ's last gasp attempt at trying to be competitive in the modern motocross market. So we'll be taking a closer look at this CZ125 when we return to CDB TV. But until then, of course, everybody be safe and well out there when you're riding those old vintage dirt bikes, and I hope to see you back here again very soon so we can talk about more of this old school type vintage iron here on your #1 and favourite classic dirt bike TV channel.